Hello everybody, and welcome to a special BA Life edition of BAInsights, where I'm very pleased to have three excellent guests join me on the topic of BA mentorship. My name's John Wisner. I've been experienced in business analysis, been a BA for several years, and currently leading the BA process capability at Capco. I'm going to introduce let my other colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll move on and talk about BA mentorship. Okay. So we could start with yourself first, Victoria, to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. So Victoria Banner, equally lots of experience as a BA, currently working as a business architect for Aldermore Bank. And really looking forward to chatting about this topic. It's one close to my heart.
Thank you, Victoria. Okay, and Fae, over to you, please.
Thank you, John. Fae Marcano, senior consultant. I have extensive experience as business analyst on financial services, legal services, and energy. Outside my role, I won the Business Analyst of the Year award in 2022. I am a volunteer for IIBA and a former mentee and mentor of the IIBA mentoring scheme.
Excellent. Thank you, Fae. You're going to provide some useful perspectives from both sides today, I'm sure.
Correct.
Brilliant. And last but not least, James, please.
Hey there, thanks John. Thanks for inviting me onto this. I'm James Compton. I'm the founder of Confidence Sage and a consultant BA with over 20 years experience. Also have another role. I'm the Director of Professional Development at the IIBA, the UK chapter, and I run the mentorship scheme, which Faye's just talked about. She's on that scheme as well, with over a couple hundred people on the scheme. And also I run a BA study group within that as one of our initiatives, which is an immersive interactive learning platform.
Brilliant, thank you, James. And there'll be no surprise to you or Faye that we'll be talking about the IIBA and the mentorship scheme as well as part of this. So look forward to that, that's for sure. But before we get on to that, perhaps we'll start with the first question, which is really why you became either a mentor or a mentee. And I wonder, Faye, could I ask you that question first, please?
Thank you. I can share both angles as a mentee and then as a mentor. So as a mentee, I decided to take on that role because I was on a critical point in my career and I was struggling a little bit with my confidence as business analyst. And I felt I needed to develop a number of skill sets. And I thought having a mentor will expand my BA horizon, so to speak, and will boost my BA journey. I had a fantastic mentor. And then a couple of years later, I decided to become a mentor myself. And fundamentally, I decided to become a mentor is because I think mentoring is one of the most elevated ways we can contribute to the business analysis profession and create a long-lasting impact on the future generations of BAs. And also because in my current organization, we have a number of resources for coaching and mentoring, and I feel other BAs in other organizations, perhaps smaller organizations, don't have that privilege and those resources. And I think there is a part of social responsibility element to being a business analyst and helping others to grow and to develop. And I think mentoring creates that virtuous cycle on promoting and growing and developing the next generations of BAs. Is John on mute? John.
Sorry, I am on mute. Sorry, I was just saying there, so thank you. So it's definitely useful to share that perspective that we don't just have to look internally at our own organisations, but we can also seek mentorship and even look for mentees outside our own organisation as well. So nice introduction there, Faye. Thank you. And Victoria, same question to you, please, if I may.
I think I was drawn to it both as a mentee and a mentor, really as a learning opportunity. I think we tend to look at classrooms as a place to learn. We tend to look at maybe particular projects or particular roles, but I actually think it's a huge learning opportunity, both being a mentor and a mentee. And I think it's as Faye touched on, I think as you go through your career, there's a lot that you can share with both your peers and more senior and more junior people. You know, I've been fortunate enough to work in organisations where there's a structure and mentoring programme. But equally, organisations like the IIBA, I think that mentoring scheme is wonderful, and it's a fantastic learning opportunity. So if you ever get the chance, I'd highly encourage people to do it.
Thank you, Victoria. And James.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a story for me. After 20 years as a BA, I had everything. I had money, I had the car, I had a good network, I had a good reputation in my industry. And you know, I really pride myself on good quality work, and it really seemed like I had it all. But there was something behind that part of my life, which where I felt a lot of anxiety and frustration, and I felt like whatever I was accomplishing didn't feel like I was living up to my potential. It just didn't seem enough, right? And I felt like I'd describe it as like living in a box that I couldn't get out of. And when I became aware of how I was feeling, then I used what I learned during my time as a monk, which is a different story. Back in my teens, I'd joined an ashram, and I'd looked honestly at my life and at my work, and then I realized I was really playing small. And at that time, I was working on a big project, transformation project for a bank, for an investment bank. And there was a big commercial stakes because we had a vendor delivering a critical piece of software into the project, and it was a regulatory project. And there was loads of politics, which I desperately hated. And I was flying solo as a BA. And it was actually one of the most stressful times in my corporate career. And I actually felt really alone. So although there was a team, I felt really, you know, alone in the whole thing. And I felt like I was holding things together in the absence of strong leadership. And all throughout that process, I was underselling myself. And because I would prefer to kind of fly under the radar. I'm somebody who likes to get busy, get into the detail, and just kind of get stuff done. And so I was also feeling at the same time that although I was doing all that, my voice wasn't heard and my contributions weren't being noticed. And I wasn't getting better opportunities. And then one day, that fateful day came when I'd foreseen that this project which I'd been on, which was at risk, hit breaking point. The vendor failed to deliver, and then the management woke up and started to pay attention to everything. And even though I'd been waving this red flag for months about the risk of this project, and the project was stopped, and then it became a witch hunt. And it became quite nasty, like it's audit to find out how we got into this situation. And that's when I broke down, actually. It's like I had a breakdown. And this is a really transformational moment because I was in a meeting and we were trying to figure out like what's our story from the client side to protect the bank and to show that the vendor had kind of failed on their delivery commitment. And as we were talking, my heart started racing and my hands became sweaty and I felt lightheaded. And I started feeling like I wasn't here and my mind became to panic. And I had this really intense anxiety. And I quickly excused myself from the meeting. I pushed open the door to my office and I just gasped for air as I ran outside. And I was wondering whether I was dying. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was having a massive panic attack. And I'd never experienced anything like that in my 20 years as a BA. So I took some time off. And when I came back, I felt like I didn't fit in. I didn't fit into the organization. And more terrifyingly, I felt like I didn't fit into my BA role. And I didn't really know where I fit in anymore. So I took a drastic step and I resigned from my role and I had no new role to go to. I had a wife, I had 2 children and my mum to look after and a mortgage. And I went to my sponsor before I had left. I went to the project sponsor who was head of a division and I asked him to give me some feedback. So can you give me some feedback? How can I improve myself? And he said something to me that really shook me. And he said, you shouldn't stay in the background. You should step up and make yourself more visible. And it really terrified me and it made me want to shrink back into my space. But then I realized something that's the thing that's holding me back all that time, that thing of the deep desire in my heart to do something bigger and more meaningful. And I realized that the way I was thinking right now was I couldn't step into that, you know, and I didn't know how can I do this? So I walked away from this good paying role. And I felt disempowered and I felt like I was playing small. And I thought, I want to find somebody who can help me discover my meaning, discover more about what I should be doing. And so I did a 1-year intensive personal development. I got mentored. I did a life coaching certification. And then I became the IIBA Professional Development Director. And what I realized that stepping into the mentoring role was actually kind of a calling. As a monk, I'd love to help others become empowered and to break through limits. And that's when things started to fall into place. And so That was my kind of story into moving into mentorship. So most of the time I'd spent thinking, you know, I'm earning money, I'm paying my mortgage off, and it was much more about money. It was more about guiding people to giving others to people and fulfilling something that I felt was missing. That's my, you know, my kind of story into mentorship.
Thanks, James. Thanks very much. And it's interesting because, I mean, I guess I was fortunate in my own journey in that when I first started as a business analyst, I had the benefit of having a very good mentor, you know, although I didn't necessarily see them that way at that time, just my manager. But Paul was very, very understanding, knew I wasn't experienced in business analysis, give me the guidance on and the patience actually to be able to develop and give me the tutoring along the way. So I started to learn the profession and learn my skill, which was obviously very much appreciated. And certainly, I think having him as one example, and certainly plenty of others along the way, of people that have mentored me in different ways, means that at the point when I was ready then to start sharing what I was learning, what I was aware of, that I think I had a few good role models to be able to learn from and be able to then sort of pass the baton on and to get into that habit of sharing what I knew, and without actually seeing it as a mentorship at that point. It was merely just sharing information across my team with colleagues, to the point that ultimately, you know, maybe some junior resources at the time might have approached me and asked for a little bit more sort of a guidance and support, which feels like formally then you are moving into that mentorship role. And as Fae might have mentioned before, you know, within Capco, we have very much a coach and coachee sort of relationship across the organisation, which naturally sort of just promotes that mentorship as well. So I'm pleased to sort of, over my time at Capco, certainly work with a lot of individuals who have been my mentor, but also who I've mentored as well. So give me both sides of the perspective. Brilliant. So thank you for opening on that. It's definitely useful to understand how we became mentors and mentees as well. I think we sort of started to touch on it a little bit, but very much it'd be nice to hear if you had any specific experience as either a mentor or a mentee that you might wish to share. And Victoria, I'd like to start with you, if possible, please.
Sure. So I think I mentioned before, I've been lucky enough in my career to work in a lot of organisations that support mentoring and and kind of major on coaching. And I think particularly in the early days of my career, I definitely looked to more senior people who I was working with to kind of get that insight, understanding, and sort of harness their experience. That was both in a formal capacity and an informal capacity. And I think as I've progressed through my career, I've certainly worked with individuals who are maybe, you know, in my team or outside of my team who want that guidance and expertise. And I think, as I mentioned before, it is a two-way learning process. I think for a mentee, you know, you get to harness that experience, you get to, I guess, reflect on what you're doing day to day and, you know, get input on different approaches and ways of tackling problems. But I think as a mentor as well, it's a chance to learn about other organisations, potentially other ways of working. People's worldview is very different from my own, and I think, yeah, that kind of two-way activity is what I like. I've then taken that into supporting the formal IIBA mentoring programme. I think I've done that 3 years as a mentor, but I think it's wherever there's an opportunity, whether that's a formal program or an informal program, it's worthwhile grabbing hold of it. It's a little bit daunting sometimes. People sort of think, oh, I might say the wrong thing, or, you know, step out of line, but absolutely not. And I think building that relationship over a long period of time is really beneficial. Yes, that's probably my sort of summary of experience, John.
Thank you, Victoria. And Fae, would you like to share your perspective on that, please?
Yeah, so I was going to talk about perspective, actually, and Victoria touched on that. One benefit, positive experience that we get from the mentoring scheme on the IIBA UK one, for example, is that you get to gain perspectives from BAs that are working across different industries. And I think this is great because it might be that you're working for financial services and you have a mentor from, I don't know, energy or legal, and you share experiences and insights on how business analysis is conducted in the organizations. Perspective in the BA role is key. And again, this helps people to also, for the mentee that has less experience, that's important. But for the mentor on developing their leadership skills, their listening skills as well. That is fundamental. One thing I have found with the IIBA UK mentoring scheme, and I know James, you're going to touch on this, is that this is a well-structured and designed program. So you have some objectives, you have guidance, and you can, in a way, measure the success of how the mentee and the mentor are achieving their development points.
Excellent, thank you, Fae. I mean, before I go, James, I'll just share my experience of mine, because I mean, I certainly recall in my I guess my prior career, or my prior role prior to joining Capco, that I remember I spent a lot of time working with technology, and there was some individuals in technology, be they architects or actually development managers, and I spent quite a lot of time. I was fortunate to work with them very closely and to be able to learn from them in terms of, you know, what are the types of questions that business analysts don't ask and you feel they should, or do they ask and actually is really beneficial. So that was really useful, as well as spending time with them to understand, you know, the requirements I gave them or the input I'd given them. How were they going to interpret it? What were they doing with it? What was their thought process? What sort of tools were they using to think about the ideas that I was presenting? And actually all of that gave some really good understanding, similar with testers as well, give a great understanding actually of my role, but from an outside perspective. So it gave me that view of why my outputs should be of a certain quality, who was going to receive them, and the sort of emphasis I needed to make on making sure that I was preparing my analysis output for the people that were going to receive it. So that mentorship, although it was a brief summary, probably went over probably about 8 years informally, and definitely benefited from it. And I mean, it's been several years since, and I still talk about it. James, over to you, then, please.
Yeah, so I'll talk about my experience of being a BA mentor, and kind of in a coaching capacity. And when I say coaching and mentoring, it's kind of one and the same thing. I think really mentorship is where you have a specific expertise aligned to the mentee as well. So you're coaching, but you also understand the subject matter and can give a bit more guidance. But for me, I work on various levels with my clients, but the biggest transformation is probably where I'd say we work on identity shifting. And this kind of goes a little bit beyond skill set building and things like that. However, it does cover it as well. But I go deep to help clients step into like a different version of themselves, because much of the time we have this sticky identity, which is based on constructs and experiences from our past. And just like my own experience, where I was saying I shed the past and step into something that's bigger and a bigger identity. So help people realize that everything they've done to date has served them in getting to where they are now, so that we don't talk negative, even though some people say I'm stuck and it's negative, but we don't say that. It's now that the things that you've done in the past may not be serving you as well. So how do you replace that kind of programming with updated software or revised identity? And I'd say that the most powerful experience of doing this is seeing how, as a mentor, you're like a channel or a guide. And the less I make it about me as a mentor and move myself out the way and become somebody who's facilitating change for the client or the mentee, the more present I am for them. So I'm there in the moment, and it makes me really tuned in. So ideas and insights and intuition, I find it flows through me, and I find myself like as an observer saying things or suggesting things or reflecting back. And when you do that, what I find is where the magic happens, and you really see palpable shifts in their understanding, right? How do people approach things? They start to think differently and see differently, and it unblocks that limited way in which they might see things. And then you see transformation. And sometimes there's, real aha moments or inspiration, or maybe tears or laughter, surprise. But the biggest thing, I think, for me as a mentor, as my experience, is that I have to exemplify whatever I'm inculcating in my clients or in the mentees, whether it's in my own client work in Confidence Sage, or whether it's on the mentorship program. It's the same thing. So if I suggest a tool or a framework, let's say, for example, journaling or specific daily routines, kind of more generally, then I have to also be practicing that myself, or even confidence or speaking or whatever it is. It's very easy to suggest things for others to do, but the real power of transformation and impact on somebody is when you kind of practicing what you preach. So being a mentor then makes me constantly improve, think about whether I'm leveling up myself, try new things and grow. And I would say I've really fallen in love with that whole experience, because that's where the power comes, the personal transformation continually for me as a mentor, while the mentee is also going through their journey.
That's an excellent point, James, in terms of bringing out the benefits, not just to the mentee, which sometimes probably feels a little bit more obvious, but to the mentor themselves. And obviously, you've mentioned that growth from being a mentee, mentor rather, as well. So there's a
Yeah.
nice segue into us exploring perhaps some of the benefits of being both a mentor or a mentee. So I wonder, while we're exploring that topic, and you so kindly brought it up, is there any additional benefits that you might want to share for either mentor or mentee?
Yeah, I think that there's, I mean, there's numerous on both sides, and I've alluded to a few. But what I think is like, if I put myself as in the role of a business analyst working in a project, we naturally connect the dots in what we do, right? We can assess the landscape of a situation, you know, impartially, right? Everyone else sort of tends to remain in their siloed world, right? An SME person is in their world, developers are in their world, or a vendor is in their world, whoever it is. But the BA is able to be more neutrally see things, because a lot of what we do is about facilitating across different stakeholder groups. So we sit in meetings, we reflect a bigger connection of dots, and people really like that, right? They see that's the value that we provide, and it helps unblock things. So similar way, the mentor can look at what the mentee is trying to do, and it's whether it's improving their speaking, building confidence, stakeholder relationships, or doing certification or qualification. What we do as a mentor, we do bring in different aspects. We connect the bigger dots. And what I see is self-belief stuff comes up, and imposter syndrome comes up, perfectionism and things like that. So lots of phenomena that hold the BA back. Also, they're trying to make the progress. And so what we do, bring everything together as a mentor using that kind of dot connecting ability that we have and reflect the bigger picture. And it helps the BA get to the heart of what's holding them back. And then we find routes that help them achieve their goals faster. And I think a lot of the benefits with a mentee, because we have an independent, impartial perspective, we can help them. There's no agenda, right? As when we're working with mentees, or at least there shouldn't be an agenda. We should be thinking, how can I fully empower this person? And that's the real power that the mentor can bring to, and the mentee, and as Faye was talking about before, it just really elevates their role and pushes them forward in the progress. So you know, things happen, right? You don't just kind of achieve your goal, if you like. You've got your functional goal within your mentorship, but you also have a lot of self-awareness and confidence. And what I see is when mentees finish what they're doing, they haven't just achieved a goal, but they've started to think bigger and think, oh, I could do this, and or I could even do that. I can start posting more on LinkedIn because I feel more confident, or I'll host an in-person event within the IIBA. Whatever that is, it feels more natural and effortless. And the things that they were kind of struggling with to want to do but were held back have now just been unlocked, and that's really empowerment. And I think also that from a perspective of not being dependent, the mentee is not dependent. The mentor's job is almost like, let me help you as quickly as possible, get on your feet so you can be empowered, not that you should be dependent on me. Now, from my perspective as a coach and charging clients, you might think, well, that doesn't make very good business sense, but it's not my ethic. My ethic is that, you know, what will it take to help you get to where you need to be quickly, and so you are empowered and you're independent, and that is the benefit to the mentee. And mentors, like, figuring out, how do I do that? One last benefit for a mentor is it changes the relationship in their stakeholders within their role, the way that they deal with people and start to interact. And so there's an accelerated kind of personal growth, communication, confidence from a mentorship side. So if you're wanting to step up into a more leading role, it's a very good avenue, actually.
Thank you, James. So certainly loads of points you made there that resonated with me at different points in my career, and definitely most recently, that's for sure. As I recognise that, Faye, I mean, you mentioned a little while ago when we were talking about the topic more generally, you was talking about some of the benefits being around awareness of other industries through mentorship. But I wonder whether you want to explore that further, or indeed just explore other benefits.
Yes, I actually like to touch on the point James made, which I love, James, about facilitating change within themselves. I think in generally, and this is what we do, and this is as business analysts, what we do when we engage with our stakeholders. We ask the questions they should be asking themselves, right? That we ask that technique with our mentees as well. And the answer, we don't actually have the answers as a mentors. The answer is usually within the mentee. So we act as a bit of a light, an enlightened, like a light to guide them through the darkness, to get them to find the answer within themselves. And the key point is that as a mentors, we have a great role in shaping, but we are not advisors. Again, we encourage mentees to take responsibility of finding their questions and what are the actions that they need to take to address their development points. And this is something, John, back to the question, that is more generally, it doesn't matter the industry, it's more generally the mindset that we bring as mentors, and pretty much what we are encouraged to do, in my experience, on the IIBA mentoring scheme.
Thank you very much, Faye. And Victoria, over to you on the benefits.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think acting as a guide is absolutely, yeah, the right way to view it. I think from a practical perspective, right, it's quite a luxury to take time out of your day, of your diary, to go and I guess invest in yourself. I think a lot of us are quite guilty of back-to-back meetings all day, every day. So it's quite nice, I think, to have a bit of a structured program such as the IIBA program, which gives you that breathing space, that time to reflect, and yeah, kind of invest in yourself a little bit, which I think is it's a massive benefit of the program, and definitely one that we should do more of. James covered a lot and Faye covered a lot, so there's not much else to add on top of that.
I certainly like the concept of it being a guide. I think I very much believe in that. But what's interesting is that, unlike a guide, I think the benefits of being a mentor is that you learn from your mentee as well. And I think certainly I have lots of experience in not just mentoring people, but more learning from them, you know, because Faye mentioned industries, but there's plenty of other perspectives that individuals bring, you know, so even just those fresh eyes of maybe not having experience on a topic or a business analysis, asking the innocent questions, you know, it's just a reminder to us all that, you know, we should be asking those same questions ourselves. You know, we shouldn't be afraid to ask those questions. It's also a good way of developing your interpersonal skills, you know, so how you communicate with others. And I think just by sharing what you know is always a really good way of growing what you know as well. You know, so just the fact we can take a time out to share what we know about a particular topic or our expertise really reinforces that benefit in a very similar way, or that experience in a similar way as doing training might be, or conducting training is a good way to really consolidate that experience and that understanding. And I think sometimes where it makes us think about a situation we're familiar with, but from someone else's perspective, because we want to make sure that they can understand it. So that, in addition, is giving us additional benefit and skills and capability that we'll take away ourselves in our role as VAs. Maybe we might share it again with our mentors. So there's certainly loads of benefits. And I think touching on the point Victoria made about taking time out, I think if we take a little bit of time to realise that it's not a one-way street, we will get benefit from every interaction, every mentorship or relationship, then maybe it causes us to dedicate more time, get more benefit as a result. So thank you for sharing all of your insight on that topic. Be interested as well as to understand your approach to find and seek guidance from other colleagues. So if we put ourselves in that mentee type of situation, you know, how would you approach senior colleagues, not necessarily to be a mentor in a longer term, but to seek their guidance and understand from them? And I wonder, perhaps Faye, if we can ask you that question first, please.
I think there is a level of when you want to approach a mentor under a non-structured program. I mean, talking on a non-structured way. I'm talking about that because I know, James, and please add into this, on the IIBA program, people are paired and they are paired peer-to-peers. So outside those sort of structured programs, when you approach somebody to be your mentor, that means that you are seeing something on them that you want to develop yourself. So and in my case, I have recently, not as a mentee, because as a mentee I was part of this structured program, but I have been recently approached by a colleague on my current client assignment who asked me to be her mentor. This is not a BA, by the way, but it's a way of an honor, because if I consider somebody a mentor, it's because there are some elements and characteristics, behaviors perhaps, that I'm seeing on that person that I want to develop myself. And And a good way to approach that person is just to be open and honest and express, these are the type of things I would like to learn, and these are the key things I want to develop. And it's not an open question like, would you like to be my mentor? I mean, that would be is the sort of question like, would you like to be my friend? But actually it's like, I would like for you to be my mentor because I would like to learn how to do X, Y, Z. So I think that is a smart way to do it, and just define what are the key things you want to learn from that particular person.
And it makes me think, though, when sort of like that, it's actually quite an honour to be approached by somebody to be asked to be formally mentored. But even it's nice before that on an informal basis to be recognised as much of an expert, to have the question posed to you in the first place. It's quite nice to get a recognition that someone appreciates you. So it's definitely, I think, by having that perspective, maybe it might make us a bit more open to asking others for help and asking their opinion, realising it is an honour to be asked.
And it's also a responsibility as well. I mean, it's as it is an honor, on the other side of the coin, it's also a responsibility because you are
Very true.
contributing to shape that person's development as well.
Absolutely. And Victoria, put that question to you, please.
I think you touched on a great point there. I think having some structure and having some clear goals that you want to achieve through that engagement is really important. So spending some time up front to establish that, I guess, that ways of working, the kind of outcomes that you're after, the ways of communicating with each other. I think that's really important at the very beginning. And I know that's something that the IIBA program, majors on. And I think also having a finite timeline, because it can snowball over time, and it can go on ad infinitum. I think if you have clear goals, a clear structure, and a clear time frame to work within, that can really help sort of crystallize exactly what you want to get out of that interaction with the colleague. So I'd probably say those are my top 3 things to think about at the beginning of when you're approaching somebody or when you're offering to support somebody.
Excellent point. And it's really, I mean, it's actually quite it's not often that we think about time frame as well. So I think it's a really well made point that this doesn't have to become a mentorship that's going to exist for the rest of our life if we don't want it to, but at least there's a goal, a short-term period at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to extend it, that's by mutual agreement. But I think having that kind of verbal contract at the beginning is really helpful.
I would agree. And James?
Yeah, I'd say I remember there's one thing actually earlier on in my career. There was I was working in a smaller company, about 50, 60 people. It was a nice atmosphere, and we had a CTO, and they let the CTO go and brought somebody else in, and he was more senior, and I was like 22, 25, something like that at the time, and he was probably in his 50s. And and when I saw him, and from first persona, just from what he looked like, I immediately immaturely created a prejudgment about him. It's like, oh, this guy's not going to be any good for us as like, I don't know why, but I just looked at him and I made an assessment. But he turned out to be an incredible person. Had worked with Virgin on the Virgin Money launch, and he was just an amazing person who was so well connected. Like he had all the qualities that I was looking for what I wanted to inculcate in myself as well to push me along. So I kind of inherently knew what I was looking for, and then he resonated with me. So I did ask him, can you guide me? And I think it's important to, like you say, set out the parameters around it so that they know what expectations, but also get a sense of whether they're reluctant or whether they're into it, and I was kind of not to be too needy, right, with somebody necessarily as well. So it has to be a natural relationship. But that worked out really nicely, and it was just, it's somebody, like you said, for a short duration in the journey, and it's like, okay, what's the next step for me, and who else comes in? And what you find is people naturally come into your life at different points and guide you to the next step, and then to the next step, like that.
And I think those points, James, makes us appreciate that, that when you're approaching someone to be your mentor, you don't necessarily have to start with that. It can be just, what's your first conversation? Is it a conversation with a view to becoming a mentor? Because certainly from my side, if I get someone approach me for me to be their mentor, the first thing I want to do is spend a bit of time with them, understand who they are, what motivates them, why they think I might be a good mentor, what they want from me, what I hope to achieve. And actually, by answering all those questions, we can get a view of whether we're mutually compatible. as a formal or informal mentee, because sometimes actually the result of that conversation is, yeah, I'll be happy to be an informal mentee or mentor, but I don't necessarily have to be a formal mentor in that situation. Maybe there's others with a more appropriate skill set that you might seek. But at least between us, there's no pre-agreed contract, as it were. We have that openness. We can discuss what we want from the relationship, and then take it forward if it mutually is acceptable. And then, of course, we can talk about timeframes and other specifics beyond that. Excellent. I wonder as well. I mean, in terms of success of mentorship and mentees, is there a way to measure that? And if I can start with you first, James, I wonder perhaps if the IIBA have a view on this.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, because sometimes the ROI on something, how do you assess that whether this is worth investing in, and how do you check to see what the progress is? So it can be difficult, but it's not actually so, as long as we have some structure, like you were saying before, having some structure around the relationship. You start off like you wouldn't really with any project, right? An assessment of, like you say, the current state. Let's say, for example, in the IIBA program, we use the IIBA competency framework, and we'll do an assessment using a spider diagram just to see where are you in terms of your communication, in terms of your modeling skills and things like that, and you'll score it from 1 to 10. And we start to explore what the goals are in this relationship, and what does success look like for you? What do you tangibly want out of this at the end? How do you kind of visualize your outcome at the end? And they define that success. And then you keep the mentorship process in pursuance of that goal. Now, you might go, of course, off during that experience, right? Because as you're going through things, it's an unfolding journey. So there's something deeper perhaps that comes up, and then they redefine the goal. Actually, I thought I wanted to learn how to do speaking, but then I realized I've got this massive problem with self-belief or imposter syndrome, right? So you're starting to work on other things as well, but with the ultimate objective for a tangible, I want to be able to speak at the end. And so you make sure the mentee is really on board with that. And then you also use your sessions. So it's not just the overall goal, right? At the end, it's like, how did you achieve where you wanted to? And you review at the end what you had set out to do at the beginning. Not just that, but also within every session. Every session is also like a mini milestone as well. It's like, okay, what do you want to do at the beginning of the session? How did you get on since we met last? And you got to make sure that there's time in between sessions for them to take action and to absorb things as well. So sometimes people say, I want to meet every week. It's not going to be progressive necessarily, because you need implementation time. It needs to sink in. And so within the session, it's like, what did you do? What would you like in this session at the end? Did you get what you wanted out of this session? So it's a mini milestone linked with the overall big picture. And that way you can kind of measure tangible success, and it comes down to the mentee, at the end of it. What's your transformation? How would you describe it? So when we do closure on the scheme, for example, then they reflect back and say, what are the scenarios you experienced, and what was the competencies that you built? And like we were talking about earlier, both for the mentor as well, because it's the mentor's growth journey too. What did they experience? How have they transformed? So we measure success of both.
Thank you, James. Thank you, James. Victoria?
Yeah, I think James touched on quite a lot of what I was going to cover, but I think there's both tangible and intangible benefits, I think, from doing it. So some of the tangible stuff, obviously, things like feedback, increased confidence. I've had BAs who I've worked with in work who have then gone on to be asked for by name. That's, I think, a massive compliment. If somebody's grown so much in confidence, their outputs are, significantly better. Customers and colleagues can see that, right? And they start kind of investing in that individual. I think intangible stuff, like I said, confidence. I think there's willingness to experiment, open-mindedness. I think there's a lot of things that you could probably get off the back of a good mentoring experience that maybe aren't as measurable as some of the other things. But I think being really clear about, I guess, that goal that you're aiming for, what the intent-based outcome is that you're looking for, that's probably the best measure of success you can get after a period of mentoring.
Thank you, Victoria. And Fae, to you.
In addition to what James and Victoria said, I think other milestones that we can track are wherever your mentee gets milestones such as they get a new job or they get promoted. So in a way that is a result of part of the objective that they have developed during the mentoring relationship, and something that is tangible and you can see. Another one that we have seen recently, and James touched on this, is how engaged they become with the wider BA community. How are they now becoming IIBA volunteers? How they are posting in LinkedIn and getting more engaged. Again, and these are subtle success measures that you can see how you have contributed to their development.
Yeah, and certainly that's a point that really resonates with me, Faye. I mean, quite a lot of the time, I sort of LinkedIn's quite a good way of doing this as well. That you see past individuals you've worked with, you might have given advice to in the past, and you see that they are moving on, getting different roles, and they're improving, and it's definitely nice to see that there's that development as well. And I think sometimes without people moving, just becoming a mentor themselves, and then passing on some of the advice that I thought was quite useful at the time when I might hand it over to them, to see that advice being moved forward again. That's always nice to see as well. So whilst it's not too something I don't measure too much, I might say, but just keeping an eye on it is a good way to just see if your valuable advice is working its way through.
I think that's the virtuous cycle that we create, because if you were helped by somebody early in your career and now you want to give back by helping somebody else, that person for sure is going to be helping others. So we are creating that maintainable, like, virtuous cycle, and that is something that perhaps you cannot measure, but something that is creating a long-lasting impact as part of the mentoring relationship.
Yeah, and that point, Faye, really demonstrates the fact that when you're being a mentor, there is a long-lasting effect, not just to the mentee, but possibly to their mentees in the future as well. So creating that right environment, giving them the tools to ultimately be a mentee, a mentor, and actually giving them their personal experience of seeing it as a positive thing so that they take it forward, is very much the responsibility of each of us as mentors anyway. So
It's
yeah.
a lovely feeling, right? You see your mentor or your mentee go on to do great things. You're kind of virtually high-fiving in the background that you were, a little part of that. It's really rewarding.
That's right. Absolutely. Now, I guess the last question I have is really how to become a mentor, really. So hopefully people watching this might have a view that they've got some interest in becoming a mentor themselves off the back of what we've heard from yourselves. So I wonder, Victoria, if we can start with you, please, in terms of how do people become a mentor?
Yeah, someone once said to me, there's always somebody who knows more than you, and there's always somebody who knows less than you. And so I think, sometimes I've spoken to more junior BAs who thought, I've got nothing to give back. I've got, I'm too early in my career. That's rubbish. I think there's always somebody who can help and bring on. So I think obviously the structure program that James and Faye and I have referred to from the IIBA is a wonderful way of doing it. James will probably jump in and tell me, but I think it's closed for this year, unfortunately, but definitely one to look out for next year. I think if you've got an organisation which supports this kind of approach, definitely grab hold of it with both hands. And if you've got, I guess, connections or people that you respect in the industry, and you think actually it'd be wonderful to get some of their support and guidance, then just reach out. I've had plenty of people email me directly, yeah, I guess we are blessed with a community that is willing to share and willing to help others grow. So I think, yeah, major on that really, and find somebody who you think can help you.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Victoria. And Faye?
I think what is key here to become mentor is to have an intentional purpose to contribute to others' development. And again, I let James to express what are the requisites to be a mentor on IIBA scheme. But if you ask me, is that genuine desire to develop others, be open to perspective, be open to contribute, and perhaps leave the judgment aside. Listen. Stop your desire to be to want to offer solutions immediately. And I think those are key characteristics of mentors and coaches. But I want for James to expand on that, because again, it will be a great way to define what we do in the IIBA mentoring scheme.
Yeah, happy to do that. And I love everything you've said, and I totally agree. In terms of Victoria's point before, registration wise, so depending on time that this gets published out there, then our closing is around middle of March, so we're probably going to be closed, but we may be able to squeeze a few people in if you're interested in mentoring, because we always have more mentees than mentors applying for the mentorship program. So I'm happy to try and fit people in, even if it's beyond middle of March. We have a middle of April kickoff for the actual scheme, so I'll probably need about sort of early April latest to be able to squeeze the last people in. But I'm very excited about building out the program more. We have to some of the points earlier, Faye, you mentioned about support structure as well, and we help mentors step into the role. So for me, I'm very passionate about empowering not just mentees but actually mentors, like, because we as BAs have incredible skill set, and we can improve that skill set like as an accelerated way through this mentorship. Like I alluded to before, the relationships, the interpersonal skills. John, you mentioned that too. The way that we can kind of read the room and understand other people, confidence to speak out, it increases our stakeholder management skills no end. And even in our personal life as well, we become more into a nurturing role. And if you don't feel qualified, then just look at your BA toolbox and look what you're doing with stakeholders on your projects. And if you're able to facilitate conversation and facilitate change, you can do it with somebody else. It just feels a bit more intimidating because it's more emotive. It can be more personal. You feel responsible for someone's journey. And you think, well, you don't want to mess up, right? And naturally the imposter syndrome will kick into that point. But like, I don't know, I don't want to mess their career up and give them the wrong advice. But we have a scheme where we can support that. Anyone's got worries and thinking, am I doing the right thing? We have support, a lot of support in place. So yeah, I think it's an amazing experience to be a mentor. And we can see as the coaching industry is massively expanding, and it continues to. So naturally in the BA space, people start to think, okay, I can make a career out of that. And absolutely, you can make a career out of coaching and mentoring as well. There's plenty of people who need it and need that support. And so if you want it, even if you either within your organization you want to step up, or if you want to do your own thing, it's still a valid and vital skill set. And I'll say one last thing just in terms of AI, because that's always a subject. The transactional functional aspect of our role is not superseded and kind of overshadowed by ability to have connection, relationships, and have that emotional intelligence. Then we run at risk of becoming kind of, if in one sense, it's a bit harsh word, but redundant, because transactional, functional kind of, stuff that can be logically done is easy to automate, but the actual human connection, which is what BAs bring to help an organization change, is a real key skill. So this helps build it out.
Yeah, I would agree, James. And I'm glad you made that point about the human connection as well, because it nicely introduces what I would say on the topic as well, which is, a way to become a mentor is to speak to other mentors and ask them how they became a mentor. Because while some would have gone through formal programs or within their own organization, there are many routes to becoming a mentor, and taking different perspectives, different views, different pathways, and having that understanding will help us as potential mentors find the path that suits us as well. So I'm glad you all covered many aspects of that question and prior ones, and hopefully gave a lot of insight to those attending BA Life and beyond, really, as to BA mentorship from both the mentor or the mentee perspective. So thank you very much, everybody, for your insights and sharing them particularly. Look forward to speaking to you again and seeing and hearing from you on topics both related and wider than mentorship. So thank you again, everyone.
Thanks a lot, John. Thank you for the opportunity.